how do you handle that when the guy just doesn't necessarily appreciate or see that labor? Like, how do you get them on the same page?
Yeah, that come up where they're like husbands like filming their wives in the kitchen, and the wife is like going around and she's like, and then I was going to take out the trash, but then I remembered that Susie needed her water bottle filled, so then I went and got the water bottle. And it's like going, and they're like, oh, haha, how funny it is that my wife has ADHD or whatever. And it's like, no, that's the mental load.
Hey, I'm Jonathan, otherwise known as Do There Jonathan.
Hey, I'm Justin, a therapist that's spent over a decade helping couples.
Welcome to Relationships, a Do There podcast. Our podcast explores conversations that every couple should be having and how we can do better as partners. Today, we are focusing on the changing gender roles in society in our home. According to a study in 2018, in 1982, 43% of fathers had never changed a diaper. Now, only 3% of millennial dads have never changed a diaper. The balance at home workload has been shifting, and we want to learn more about it. So today, we are talking to Kay Kirkenmeyer, a licensed practicing counselor out of Lee Summit, Missouri. Thank you, Kay, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
All right, Katie. Well, first, tell us maybe a little bit about yourself. Like, what are your passions? Maybe what led you to being a counselor?
Yeah. So I went to undergrad for education, and I found when I was in my student teaching rotation, I was just way more invested in what was going on with the kids than if they were actually learning. And kind of like what was preventing them from showing up, and being able to sit and learn and do all the things kids are expected to do. So I took a victory lap in college to get my minor in psychology, and then went to grad school to become a therapist. So started out working in trauma. So I worked in sexual violence for about 7 years combined in the Chicagoland area, and then moving to Kansas City. Then worked exclusively with healthcare workers for a little bit with Justin. And then I decided to open my private practice. So my husband and I we experienced infertility, and I, as a well-resourced person, very familiar with therapy, had a really hard time finding a therapist that I wasn't explaining everything to about the processes we were going through. And then after we had our oldest, I, again, know a lot about mental health, being a therapist, and postpartum anxiety really just like slapped me in the face, was really not prepared for it at all. I was really we talk a lot about postpartum depression. That's what all the screenings are for. And so I just got really passionate about helping both of those populations. And then kind of in doing that and specializing in infertility and perinatal mental health, I landed in also this, wow, I have so many moms and just parents in general coming to me being completely overwhelmed with all the shifts that happen once they become parents and all the mental load that they're continuing to absorb now that they've added a third person into the relationship. So that kind of became my passion, and kind of gone from there. Yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying what I do.
I absolutely love that. Well, and so it sounds like, you love to be able to work with new moms, and you love to be able to work with moms just overall. And I guess I'm kind of curious, like, how common is it that there's like postpartum anxiety? Do you know how often this really shows up? And is that even something that's like really discussed very much in society?
Yeah, right. Good question. Yeah. So yes, we don't talk about it. I think we're talking about it more now. Maybe that's because my algorithm is tweaked a little bit more than it used to be. Maybe that's biased perspective. But I think we talk a lot about postpartum depression. Even the screening you get, if you get a screening at all at your 6-week checkup with your OB, it's a postpartum depression screening. And so the experience I had was like, well, no, I don't feel disconnected from my baby. In fact, I love my baby so much I can't let them out of my sight, right? Like I can't stop watching them to make sure they're breathing okay, right? All of these things. I feel stressed when someone else is holding them, right? So I felt really confused by that. Like, this isn't postpartum depression, but there's a lot broader range of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that we just don't talk about. We're familiar with postpartum depression, but there's also postpartum OCD, postpartum bipolar disorder, postpartum psychosis, postpartum PTSD, right? There's all these things that we don't talk about that birthing individuals are really at risk for. I think the statistic, I'm just double checking, is 1 in 5 women will experience a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder,
Yeah.
which is high. And then actually 1 in 10 men will also experience a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, which is also not something we talk about, which is, there's so much stigma and shame that can come along with that, right? But it happens too. Yeah.
That's like the part that I found like the most interesting. I remember talking and working with somebody, and you know, I had never actually really heard of like the mood disorder really affecting men, especially like post having a baby.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he just discussed, he's like, I feel so helpless, like
Yes.
when this baby cries, like they don't want me. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't know what to be able to do, and I feel like I can't really do anything whatsoever. But aside from that, I mean, I always really kind of think that, like, man, if I really wanted to in a lab create a situation that like perfectly created depression or anxiety, it would be having a baby. Like, it feels like you are not socializing whatsoever. You have a
Right.
ton more stress on you. You're
Right.
getting little to no sleep whatsoever.
Correct. Yes.
And
Yes.
I mean, if you're going out in the sunlight, you're like blinded as well. And so
Sure. Yeah.
all of like
Yeah.
these little factors, it feels like, in this petri dish, man,
Mhm.
absolutely very easily can be able to create depression and anxiety for, man, so many women. And what I've discovered, yeah,
Mhm.
for men
Mhm.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. I usually tell all my clients there's a reason that sleep deprivation is a form of torture. It is not good for us. It's not good for our bodies. It's not good for our mental health. And so that absolutely, that alone, right? Let alone all the other things that come along with transitioning into having a baby, having a newborn. Yeah, it's just kind of a hotbed for not feeling your best self, for
Is
sure.
there anything like postpartum that, you know, like, or maybe women or men are feeling, or like signs that you're like, this is a sign that you probably have something that you need to seek additional resources or help for?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things I talk about, particularly with birthing individuals, which is most of the time women, but I want to make sure I'm being inclusive, um, is that about 80% of women experience what's called the baby blues, which is the kind of the first 2 weeks postpartum, and that's caused typically by this huge hormone shift that happens after birth. So you have this huge drop in hormones, and it causes like weepiness, right? Like you might have experienced your partners like looking at their baby and just crying for no reason, being like, they're so beautiful, or I don't know why I'm crying, right? That's what we call the baby blues. Now, kind of beyond that, if we're experiencing, continued tearfulness, or obsessive thoughts about the baby, or feeling really disconnected from the baby, having trouble feeling connected or attached, kind of beyond that, then we're like, okay, this is maybe something that we want to be a little bit more curious about. Certainly worrying about your child is not abnormal, right? But things like obsessing about wake windows, right? Or constantly checking the car seat straps, or
Hmm.
feeling maybe you have a baby that is not quite failure to thrive, but isn't gaining weight maybe the way that they're supposed to be. So kind of constantly feeling stressed about feeding and how much they're gaining, or playing Dr. Google because babies do lots of weird stuff. Right? Those are kind of things that we're like, all right, let's get a little bit more, let's be a little bit more intentional about seeing what's going on. And then certainly, right, like not having any motivation, not feeling compelled to tend to your baby's cries in any way, shape, or form, or constantly being like, I don't want to take care of the baby, passing it off to your partner if you have one. Those are all kind of sort of the, larger red flags that we want to make sure we're talking more about.
No, that's really helpful. And I think that it hopefully is really helpful for like anyone who is listening. And if they, frankly, like, it's not only for themselves to be able to have insight, but for somebody that you love. Like, if you see
Right.
those really kind of coming up, like, this is something to be able to talk about. This is something
Yeah.
to be curious about, right?
Yeah.
Like, not really so
Yeah.
much to accuse.
Yeah. And one thing I always like to note too, I think sometimes women have this fear, right? So intrusive thoughts are common. I wouldn't say they're normal, right? But intrusive thoughts after you have a baby can be a thing for sure, where maybe you're carrying your baby down the stairs and you think, what if I drop the baby right now? Or if you're driving in your car and you're like, oh my gosh, what if my car went off the road right now? We don't talk about that a lot because I think women feel afraid that their children are going to be taken away from them. And so, but intrusive thoughts kind of are more along those lines of postpartum OCD. Feeling compelled to harm your child is a different story. That's where we're talking about some psychosis. But I want to say all of that because I want to normalize it too, because lots of people experience it. And even that, and then you get into the, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad parent. I have thought about harming my baby. Right. And so, it's much more nuanced than just like, oh, I just feel sad around my baby. Right.
Yeah, and usually where I push back, and we'll kind of get onto gender roles next, but like usually where I push back on people is that like, really our thoughts do not define us whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right? That goodness gracious, if I was really defined by my thoughts, like I'm pretty sure I'd be in jail right now.
Yeah.
With the person that cut me off or like whatever, like that darn jerk in third grade, like
totally. Yes.
There are, I don't know. I think that it's really easy to be able to have so much shame about our thoughts and to be able to feel as though like my thoughts are bad, which means that like myself, I am bad.
Yes. Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So at what point, or I guess if you're experiencing these thoughts and such, would you jump straight, like maybe work on this? Or if you're a dad and it's like, if you're noticing things, you could do this? Or is it just like go straight to a therapist or doctor? I guess like, are there things you should do at home first and see if it gets better, or should you seek professional help right away? I guess like kind of what's the tools you should use if you are experiencing these thoughts?
Yeah. Well, certainly checking in with your provider is always a good thing. And I'm going to be the first to say, I think everybody needs a therapist, right? I'm super biased. So, I would say, like find somebody that specializes in, is certified in perinatal mental health. But I think, the main thing is just like first and foremost being open about it, talking to, because there's so much value in feeling connected to other people. And so talking to your partner, talking to other people who are parents and saying, hey, this is going on for me, right? Like, and sometimes we get the, oh my gosh, that happened to me too. And that in and of itself can feel really validating and like, okay, I can handle this, right? Now, obviously, if you're getting the, nope, that never happened to me, that can be an opposite, an adverse sort of response. But I think there's so much power in community. And then, the people that know and love you also are really well versed to know how to support you most of the time too. And so, certainly being open about that and in conjunction with therapy, medication, whatever you need to feel supported.
Yeah.
Well, I love how John really kind of started off like this whole episode where he was discussing how, with having kiddos, how the roles of being a father now, it feels like the dynamics inside the house, it's really begun to be able to shift. And I don't know if that's just from me being able to watch TV or if this is something that like is true and is real. And so I guess we wanted to be able to start here. Like, is this something that is actually happening, or is this something that like Hollywood's just kind of convincing us of?
Oh, sure. Well, I would argue the clients that sit in my office would tell you it's not just Hollywood. But, the thing that I say a lot is like, when you are in, let's say we're talking about, right, a first child that you're bringing into your relationship, we're adding a third person to the relationship, and triangulation typically is never a good thing. And so we're already really, we're starting off with, we have the same amount of hours in the day as we did before, but now we have an entirely new person who has their own needs and needs to be taken care of. And we have to figure out how to continue our lives while we added a ton of responsibility. And then going back to that, right, like adding on to the sleep deprivation, trying to learn a new person that can't speak or do anything for themselves. We're all just trying to figure it out at once. In this, it feels like a pressure cooker almost, because there's also the societal pressure of like, enjoy every minute, like, and people constantly are like, want to know, how's your baby sleeping, right? Instead of like, how are you sleeping? How are you doing, right? Everything becomes about the baby versus caring for these individuals that we knew prior to becoming parents. So that's a very long answer to say, yes, things are actually shifting. And oftentimes too, what I think can happen is, given the way that I think men and women are socialized, is if we're in a heteronormative relationship and maybe one person has already been sort of filling in these stereotypical gender roles, that has been sustainable for so long. Well, now we added another person and now I'm at my limit and I no longer have that capacity to continue doing it. So it can feel like, wait a minute, this is how things have always been. Why all of a sudden is this a problem? Where it's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back of like, well, these things have been bothering me for so long, right? I just didn't realize I didn't have the capacity or the energy.
I like what you said when you were talking about, when people ask about like, how's the baby sleeping? Or like they always ask about the baby, they don't ask about the person. It's kind of like a good reminder that, if I have friends that have a baby or something, it's like, check in on them too, and make sure I ask how they're doing. Because a lot of times, you're curious about the baby, you're asking about the baby, but it kind of does feel like that sometimes that, you're forgetting about the parents, and it is hard. So I like what you were saying about that as well. It's just a good reminder.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that I was talking to you, either Katie or John before, and so I might have you guys, one of you two, step in where it, like, when the baby arrives, that's where like really these roles, like we kind of begin to be able to settle in it. And so I love that, like Katie, you kind of described that like maybe we are naturally really kind of drawn to these different roles prior to adding a child into our life. But what was interesting is I think I was talking to either one of you of like, how is it solidified? How does it really then like really kind of take off there where ordinarily I think what we kind of talked about is like paternal leave versus maternal leave and how that affects the dynamic. And so I was, I guess, hoping for you guys to be able to talk maybe a little bit more and how does that really play into this?
Yeah, so I was actually reading this book. It was called Having It All. It's by Dr. Cranlow. She's an economist at Wharton. And one of her chapters was talking about maternal and paternal leave. And it was talking about how men not getting paternity leave in most cases really, from off the bat, splits the motherhood, or I guess the child duties right away. So usually, if anyone's going to get leave, it's going to be the mom. And so the mom has however much time of leave, and she has the time with the baby, where the man usually goes back to work within a couple of weeks. And so she has all this time with the baby and naturally also feeding the baby and everything. But everything else, she's learning about the baby. She learns his sleep schedule. She learns all the ins and outs, what makes the baby happy, how to soothe the baby, kind of really connects with the baby. While the man has to go to work and doesn't get that one-on-one time with the baby. So he just naturally doesn't, learn these things. And then it kind of just compounds over time where down the road, a year later, it's still the mom, even so she's back at work, she's still doing all the childhood things because she just always has. And the guy never really picks it up. Whereas, when men do get leave, they actually are way more involved as dads. And later on in life, they're much more involved in knowing all these different things. So I thought it was a really interesting point how society as a whole kind of furthers this unbalance between moms and dads.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's the idea of, right, like, women have the glass ceiling, right, where we like it seems to be that once you become a parent, you right, there's statistics behind this of once you become a parent, you are less likely to get promoted as a female, right? There's all these and it seems that you have to choose between becoming a parent or succeeding in your career, where those are not the same for men. And so that even further sort of puts this, well, this expectation of like, okay, I'm a parent now. Like this is my major identity, right? I've made this choice. Now there's this shift. Whereas that expectation is not put on men of like, okay, you had a child. Now, certainly there's the expectation of like, get back to work, right? I don't want to negate that at all. But yeah, to your point, it's a huge, it really like silos us into saying, okay, the birthing individual, the mom is going to be the one that's in charge of all of the child's needs, because they have to be, right? Because dad has to go back to work.
One, I think what's really fascinating is that, with overall with society and how it's set up is that like if my daycare calls someone, it isn't so much that we really specified, it is they're being able to call my wife. And I think how I've really had to be able to challenge myself in a way, and I don't even know where I really like learned this. It was almost kind of this idea of like the importance of my job, and so if we have a sick kiddo, like who does that really kind of fall upon? What does like equity, what does that really truly like look like in the relationship? And do I have like this idea of, is my job, is what I do more important than the other person? And just honestly, what a really gross experience that is to be able to really kind of compare, and frankly, how easy it is to really like diminish and minimize like what it is that my spouse does, as well as like when you miss work, like the work, especially in her industry, it doesn't just like magically go away. It just continues to compound and pile up. And so I think that I heard that like for every 1 day missed, it takes about like 3 days to be able to make up for it. And so it isn't so much that like being a mother, you aren't just missing a day here and there. It is perpetually being behind, perpetually like playing catch up, perpetually like being in that state of threat and in that state of stress as well.
Yeah. 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 And I think as you're saying, as we're talking about, right, we're talking about work in general, I think it's also important to look at how like oftentimes we view paid labor as much far more valuable than unpaid labor that's happening at home, right? Granted, obviously we have to be able to pay the bills. That's understandable. But if you're in a fortunate enough position financially and you can outsource a lot of these things, right? Like there are people that are doing these jobs and we're not valuing them. We're not valuing that this is still labor that's happening, right? So when we talk about the invisible labor that's happening at home, that's what we're talking about too, right? Where it's not just you get to have your 9 to 5 and then you go home and that's it, right? There's still unpaid labor that has to happen behind the scenes to keep everything running too. That's completely undervalued.
So I know you guys almost like took two different ways of maybe being able to answer this question, but with something that's invisible to us, how do you help someone to actually be able to see it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I'm a certified fair play facilitator. So that's a whole way of looking at the mental load and invisible labor and kind of redistributing and helping with that balance. And that's one of like the key takeaways from it is like, how do we make the invisible visible? So because if it's invisible, we don't value it. And so it really is learning how are we sharing this, right? How do the diapers get in the diaper caddy, right? Like, how does that happen? There's no magic fairy that just comes and, drops to, well, maybe Amazon is, I don't know, but somebody's putting in that order, right? And so like, it's really getting down to brass tacks of like, how are we deciding what's getting done in our home? And I try to challenge people to look at their house as like, look at your home and your life outside of your paid labor as the most important business in your life, right? Like if you, and this is the question that comes up a lot is like, oh, well, just like, tell me, like one partner is like, well, just tell me what you need help with. Right. But that, if we're talking about this like a business, if you went to your boss every single day and said, what am I doing today? What do you need help with? Like you'd probably get fired. At some point, it is on you to learn the tasks that have to be done to get the job done, right? To know how to plan for them, to conceptualize them, execute those tasks so that things are getting done. And I think, right, oftentimes it feels like that mental load of, okay, are we almost running out of diapers? Are the kids, okay, they're out of newborn diapers. I need to get bigger ones because they're leaking a lot, right? Like oftentimes that sort of Rolodex of just never ending to-do list is tends to seem that it falls on the female in a heteronormative relationship. And so it's also about how are we talking about it, right? How are we communicating about what we're doing? Because me saying, hey, we need more diapers. Can you get more diapers? Right? If your baby only responds to like Pampers sensitive baby diapers and your partner is like, what, I got diapers. And they're like the Costco brand, right? Then we're talking about a fight over something when it's like, well, I did the thing you asked me. I bought the diapers. I got the diapers, right? So it's really, really talking about like, what does it mean to take on a task from start to finish, right? Because if you're just helping, you're not taking anything off of the person who's doing the mental load's plate because they still have the mental load. You're just taking the execution off. You're not taking all the energy that goes into the planning and the thinking about it off of their plate. I could probably keep rolling, but I'm going to let you guys ask questions if you have.
Honestly, that's basically what my content is on my channel, is talking about all these things that as a dad or even a husband, I just didn't realize my wife did. Like there's just so many things. So it's just like, oh, I didn't realize that you do that. And like that's hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of mental energy. And I just never appreciated it. So I think it's really important that's discussed. But I also get asked a lot of comments. And it's women saying, I know it's this way. I know I'm doing a lot, but he doesn't see me doing this. And I can't get him to see. He just doesn't value it. So do you see that a lot in your practice? Or I guess like, how do you handle that when the guy just doesn't necessarily appreciate or see that labor? Like, how do you get them on the same page?
Yeah. Yes. That happens a lot, for sure. And so one of like sort of like the core tenets of fair play is like breaking down a task into conception, planning, and execution. And so that kind of helps us understand, hey, it's not like when we hear, can you handle the laundry or can you take out the trash, right? We are hearing just the doing. We're just hearing the execution. And so I think when we break it down in that way, right? I that come up where they're like husbands, like filming their, I'm getting off track here, but they're like filming their wives in the kitchen, and the wife is like going around and she's like, and then I was going to take out the trash, but then I remembered that Susie needed her water bottle filled. So then I went and got the water bottle, and then I went to fill up the water bottle and realized that we needed a new filter in the fridge. So then I went and ordered the filter, and then I realized, and it's like going, and they're like, oh, haha, how funny it is that my wife has ADHD or whatever. And it's like, no, that's the mental load, right? Like you're just, that right there is like, that's what's happening. That's not ADHD. That person has too much in their mind, that they're doing way too much. And so when we talk about the conception and the planning pieces, right, that's what we're referring to. So helping our partners understand it's not just the doing, like it's how do these things get done, right? Like who is paying attention to we're running low on trash bags? And then how is that task getting rectified, right? Like once the trash bags are low, who's reordering them or who's buying them? Who's adding them to the grocery list, right? And actually doing that is the planning piece of it, right? Putting them on the list, that type of thing. And so it almost is going through, right? Kind of and saying, okay, what are our shared responsibilities as a couple and as parents who have lots of things we have to do for ourselves and for our and individuals and our children, and saying like, what does it take to make our life run? And really looking like start to finish, what does it mean to do this task? Not just throw the laundry in, hit start, right? Like what does actually doing the laundry mean? And then I think sometimes where we're missing is kind of really having communication about why we value something being done, right? Because it's really easy to feel like you're being micromanaged or being barked at or orders or things like that. And so understanding why we value something being done a certain way, right? Like explaining to our partners, hey, like I clutter makes me feel really stressed and anxious. So when the toys are not reset every day, that makes it really challenging for me the next morning to get up and start everything off. Like I already feel overwhelmed, right? I understand the toys not being put away is like not a huge deal, but like this is triggering to me, right? Or maybe somebody has financial trauma. So we get really particular about how we're managing money, right? Or how we're paying bills and things like that. And so it's really important to also just be communicating about the why behind these things. Like, why are these things so activating for us? Because all we're hearing is like, oh my gosh, like my wife is just nagging me again and again about these stupid things. And it's like, that's right. Like the nagging is like the tip of the iceberg of what's really happening, right? We're just not communicating about what it's really about. The trash is like the vehicle for the larger conversation.
Yeah, one thing that John said in our pilot that he talked about is like one maybe kind of epiphany or something that we're hoping for kind of the audience to be able to take away from this is when our spouses talk to us, like to be able to believe them, to be able to like not minimize, not say like, oh, you're just type A, that's silly, that's ridiculous, not diminish, but like, can I really truly believe? Can I like allow influence with me actually being like empathetic and being able to care and being able to really like catch you in this way? Because I heard, that little voice in the back of my head just saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, you're so ridiculous. Again, like the minimization that happens. And I think, again, like so much of what I know John and who I hope to be is like someone that believes them and somebody that actually is able to show up. One thing that you said at the very end, which kind of reminded me of, is, I once heard that, when we communicate with each other, we're always communicating a need. It's just, can I truly hear that need? So I want to feel, maybe this need is like, I need a partner. I need someone who shows up. I need to be loved. I need to be cared for. But I think that like through our filters, through our lenses, like usually from our partner's mouth to our ears, it just really gets twisted in a way to where we just can't hear that need where it is, I'm struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, right, we often hear what is going to be extra evidence to support our insecurities, right? And so that's going to make our defenses go up, right? So really, right, asking like, okay, what did you hear me say versus like what I communicated, and making sure we're not missing there. But I think the other piece of it is, we are always going to have differences in values, right? Like conflict is always going to happen. And I think if we can come to an understanding that you don't have to agree and feel the same way that your partner feels about it, right? We don't have to say like, no, you're right, or no, you're right. And I think we get so caught up in that, is like, it's got to be like her way or his way. And it's not that at all, right? Like what makes a good relationship and being able to feel supported is a point of connection. And right. So it's when I share, hey, this is why this is valuable to me. It's being able to be held in that. Okay, yeah, you know what? I don't really think that like in my mind, right? The toys are not that big of a deal, but I am hearing that this is really stressful for my partner. And so while I don't agree, right, like I want to try to support that, and vice versa, right? And making sure we're doing that for each other. Because I think we get stuck in like, I have to prove my point and I have to prove myself right as to like why this is ridiculous that we're doing it this way. And it doesn't actually matter, because we're never going to agree on what's truly right. It's much more like, how are we connecting in that moment and showing each other that we can be held.
I don't know. You're kind of reminding me of a story where I don't know if John knew this. So we actually met at like my kiddo's birthday party, and for our 2-year-old, he actually just had his birthday before that, and my wife, like at the very end, was, this was just awful. This was just awful. And that's where I was like, all right, like how about, I can be able to do the next one. I'll be able to kind of put together like the birthday party for our 4-year-old. And I think I'm number one, I had it at a park and she said that that was cheating, by the way, that since I didn't have it at home. She's like, that's cheating. You can't do that. Well, I did it. Okay. Got my cheat code. But so we had it at the park, but I think like where I blew it, or maybe it was kind of like a really good opportunity, is we just really didn't discuss like expectations whatsoever of like, what did we want the party to be able to look like? Because I was very, very minimalistic whatsoever. I had, all right, like we discussed, do you want food? No, okay, well, we don't have to have food. And then we ordered the decorations from like Timu a month in advance, and so we were able to get that all done and over with. And then we where I think I started to slip is this was kind of around being able to create kind of the guest list, where I maybe in my expectations it was like shrug shoulders. If they show up, they show up. Whoever shows up is going to be just fine. And she's like, we might need to be able to know how much food to be able to have. And we, I think again, like that was where we had kind of our misunderstanding, is like her expectations, her hopes in regards to the birthday party was just really different from my own. I mean, I myself, I was like, well, he's having a birthday, and so why like get him a present or why get him anything on his birthday? Like he has a party coming up, and luckily my wife like convinced me or stated, yeah, we need to be able to have him open something on his actual birthday, and I was way wrong. I was absolutely wrong about he's fine, he's 4, he's gonna get 1,000 presents in 2 days. But it was just, I don't know, the expectations is what seemed to be kind of like the major thing that felt different for us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing for sure. Yeah. Of like, yeah. Well, and then you're saying, right, you're like, okay, I'll absorb this task. I'll take over the birthday party, which in theory is great, right? That's the like, I'll like, just let me know, I'll help, right? But then we're not, right? We're not communicating about like, what does it mean to have taken over that task, right? And like, if I take it over, right, are you comfortable with the way I might do it?
Mhm.
And making sure we're talking about that too. Because yeah, we're gonna have differences for sure, and it's all well intentioned, right? Of course, it's like I want to be helpful, and that is supportive, and right, it's also right. We're not sharing a brain, unfortunately, and we have to be able to communicate about it.
I think that's also a good example of where so many times like both parties are well intentioned, but it results in conflict and kind of a point of contention because Justin's over here. He's trying to help, take over this task and do it, but he misses the mark and doesn't do it the way she would have done it. And maybe, I know your kids are young, but if we like have an example of maybe like something in the household, like a certain way that you do laundry or whatever it is, and she does this task, almost on a continual basis. She's been doing it the whole relationship, and she's overwhelmed or needs more. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then you do it and you don't do it how she does it. And then she comes in and starts critiquing you like, yeah, you did this wrong. You did this wrong. You didn't do it like how I wanted it. He's going to be like, why did I even bother? Like, I was just trying to be nice and help you. Or like, this is why I don't do these things. This is why you just do it. And like, it was well intentioned. It just resulted in conflict. And so I think that's a good, point to bring up, because it's like you recognize that, okay, I did make mistakes. I learned from this. I was wrong in taking that accountability. But also on the flip side, I think it's important for a woman to understand kind of the other side of it. That's like, you have to be,
Sure.
if you didn't have those expectations or exactly what you wanted, you have to be okay. That's going to be a little bit different, or maybe not exactly how you would have done it, and be okay with that. And I think that's an important story to bring up, because it's a good example that happens all the time. I feel like in our houses that it creates fights, and it's a fight where both people meant well.
One thing that I was kind of curious about, John, is like for you, how did you decide like which tasks to be able to take over? And I'll put take over in like air quotes, but like, how did you decide uh, which ones to really be able to focus on?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of it's just communication. Like, my wife knows I hate doing the laundry. I don't know what it is about laundry, but I just can't stand it. But dishes, I don't mind the dishes at all. I actually can, playing with water, I don't know, it's fun for me. So like cleaning up the kitchen after dinner and such, it doesn't bother me. I just turn on a podcast or watch TV while I'm doing it, and it's fun. Where laundry, in theory, it's like the same thing. You can fold clothes while watching TV, but I just can't stand it. So like we have a communication of things that I like doing, she doesn't like doing. And that's usually how we split. But also, if she's working late one night or the laundry needs to be done and she's doing something else, it doesn't mean I'm just gonna ignore it and not do it. Like if it needs to be done and I'm not doing anything, I'll do it. It's just usually we have our separation of things that I normally do or she normally does. And a lot of times too, it's like we get to a Saturday and it's okay. These are the things that we need to get done. We're hosting people later today in our basement. It's a mess. We have people that are coming over that have never been here, so we maybe need to do extra tidying up. We need to clean the bathrooms. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? And we kind of split up and, communicate and talk about that. And so, it's just being, I think, willing to participate in that and have the expectation that you're going to do it together and then dividing up based on strengths, weaknesses, who likes doing what. I think that's how we do it. And it's worked out really well.
And so I kind of found out that like over the weekends, I absolutely love a to-do list. And, side note, what's kind of funny is that like when I talk to my wife about like, all right, like what's your like idealistic weekend? She's like, I don't know, just like being able to lounge, being able to just relax. Like that sounds very rejuvenating for her. And that is completely the opposite for me. Like that's just draining. And that just sounds so freaking boring. Like we're doing nothing. We're just laying here. Okay. But I don't want to watch The Summer I Turned Pretty. I'm sorry. Like I don't know if you guys watched.
Are you Team Jeremiah or Conrad? Where are we at?
I'm the team, the guy who wins at the very end. I don't want to give any spoilers, but
It's okay. Okay,
somebody wins. Anyways, so what for me though, like what really fills me up is like being able to actually get a lot of stuff done, like being able to have that to-do list and being able to see it really kind of checked off. But like the idiosyncrasy that I found with my wife is that like if you really want to tick her off, you need to write down a to-do list for her. And you need to be able to put her name next to it, where that is just not a good idea. Like, do not do that, because then it like kind of jumps a little bit into like the relational dynamics, right? Like where it no longer feels peer between us, it more feels like positional, where I am instructing her and telling her what to do, which frankly, I'm sure that that's why like so many women hate or do not want to be able to like tell men, this is what you need to do. This is what you're not seeing, is that like, I don't want to be your mother. I do not want to be able to mother you because like, frankly, I don't think having a child as a spouse is not very attractive. I want to be able to have a peer. And so I think that it's like relatively that dynamic where we have to be able to figure out collaboratively, like what is number one, that negotiation of a very good weekend? What does that look like to us? And number two, like, what would she feel comfortable with? And then kind of more importantly, like, when would she want to be able to do that? Is this actually realistic? Because I found that like, I can absolutely rattle off 17 things that need to be done. But if there's really not any time whatsoever, goodness, like that feels like that's just more mental load on her, like that isn't respite, that isn't relieving, where for me, like being able to have a to-do list is very relieving because I no longer have to think about it in this moment. And so for me, and I don't know if you've really kind of found that at all in your experience, Katie, like if how to be able to balance, like how to be able to keep your partner a peer versus when it begins to be able to feel positional and
yeah. 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 I think, something that was coming up for me as you were both talking was really, the goal is not to like be like, okay, you have 5 tasks, I have 5 tasks. Like we really
Yeah.
want to look at what kind of energy does this task take, right? Trash is a once a week task. Cooking dinner is an everyday task, right? So
For
we have
sure.
to also be considering what kind of mental energy and just physical energy does what we do take up. Um, because I think that helps us feel more like we're experiencing balance and we feel partnership versus like keeping score, so to speak, right? Well, like you do XYZ and then I'm doing 3 things, right? It's much more about, right? What do we actually have the capacity for? And are we like utilizing our energy well, right? Um, if someone is doing all the daily repetitive tasks and the other person is not doing any of them, right? Even if they're both doing 50 things, that doesn't feel balanced. And so I think and also, right, some of that's up to like each individual, right? Like you said, John, you were like, I don't mind doing the dishes, right? But some people might hate doing the dishes, right? Like I don't like to cook because it creates dishes. Like that's my, and some people love to cook. So I think it's also really about identifying what are there any things that people feel like fulfilled by, and making sure we're kind of communicating about that too.
So a lot of times I see men comment on my videos and they say, why, or I don't need to do these indoor tasks, such as, cleaning and such, because I mow, I do house maintenance, I fix up the cars. And I come back and say, well, these are infrequent tasks that they don't take up much time when
Mm-hmm.
you look at it holistically when comparing to daily tasks such as cooking,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning, laundry, and everything. And when they come back, well, she's not able to do these things. I do all these things. And that's just always their comeback. They don't really go on further than that and don't really think about the time. So how would someone address this when that is the comeback? How do you get them to kind of think about things differently? Because I always hit a roadblock thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I come back, it's not the same. And they just like stonewall.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a good, something that could be, you know, um, thrown back, right? I don't know if that's what the right verbiage to use, but I think if we are asking our partners to like absorb some of the indoor things, there is a little bit of a learning curve of like, okay, you've never done the laundry before. There has to be a learning curve where I am helping you understand to learn how to do the laundry. Similarly, right? Like our partners, right, who are mostly doing indoor tasks can learn to do outdoor tasks, right? What we're aiming for is balance, right? So you saying I'm only going to do these things because my partner can't, right? Like you're you're sort of proving her point. Right, of like you're pigeonholing her too, and so I think even just something like, yeah, you're mowing the lawn. Like that could be a task that gets balanced too. Right? Lots of people who are single and don't have partners have to figure out how to get their cars fixed and do home maintenance and all of these types of things too. And sometimes managing a task is outsourcing it, right? And so I think if me not knowing a lot about cars, me managing my car is taking it to get an oil change and instead of doing it myself, right? Like that's still us managing a task. And so even if it is, right, like if that's something we can do, right, outsource and more like indoor task. So I think, yes, absolutely, you're right with the energy piece of it. Cause yes, like mowing the lawn is also seasonal, right? We don't have to do that all year long. We have to cook every single day of our lives. So like I get that for sure. But I also think like pushing back a little bit and being like, okay, but why can't your partner help out with that too? Right? Like why it's a partnership. We should both be managing these things.
Tell me, with like this change that you've seen with your clients, like what do you think has really helped them? And is it more of a light switch, or is it something that, I don't know, is like like getting into a pool? Are we very gradually easing
Mm,
into this?
hmm hmm I think it's both. That's a non-answer. But I see it both ways. I think sometimes I see like these light bulb moments of, oh my gosh, I had no idea all of that was going on in your head. Like, of course, it makes so much sense. And other times, so then that feels much more like, okay, we're just diving in and like things are changing. Other times it does feel more gradual where I might be like, okay, let's start with 1 to 2 tasks and redistribute at that time, right? Like if we're going to look at the whole house as a whole, that can feel insurmountable, and then we're going to be nitpicking each other, right? I don't want to get into this like we're gonna go in and say you do, like I listing out everything and say, well, who does what, and we have to go through everything, because then that's a recipe for disaster most of the time. So starting with, okay, what is the one task that we are struggling with the most? Like laundry, buying supplies, whatever, right? And let's start there and talk about like, what does that mental load look like? What does it mean to do that task start to finish? Why do we value it? And then let's see how we can redistribute it to make it feel more balanced. And I think little by little, then that can be like, all right, we're making baby steps. And then along the way, the hope is that, right, we're communicating, because that is just like a key, like chef's kiss for a healthy relationship, right? Is that we're communicating. And so in sitting down and doing that, then we're communicating more, which means we feel more connected because we're being vulnerable about why we value things. And we're much more likely to want to support each other and help each other out if we feel connected.
Well, and almost what I'm kind of thinking about as well is, I'm thinking of John Gottman, and with Gottman, he discusses like we have our rose colored glasses, we have our poop colored glasses in all relationships. And to be able to really shift our lens from being poop colored to being rose colored, it is about like refiguring like this balance of like, what am I focusing on? Where am I really kind of putting my energy? And so he always stated, if we have 5 good moments and 1 negative moment, we are at 0. We didn't go into the red, or we didn't go into the black or the red in this bank account. We're just at 0. And so, what I'm hearing you say is how important it is that like with these tiny snowflakes of a change, can I see it? Can I appreciate it? Can I articulate it? Can I love you around it? Because like that snowflake is going to roll downhill and it's going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. That, what I'm really afraid of is, a very, very good way to be able to defeat someone from being able to have change is to say nothing. That's a really good way to be able to go back to our pattern, to our dance, how we've always been.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, even though like that dance and interaction is painful and aggravating, like that without us really articulating the change that we see in our partner, it's just so easy to get stuck in it. And I've worked with plenty of people where they discussed, and I'm sure that there's going to be some eye rolls where it's like, oh, do I really have to be able to praise my partner for
Sure. Yeah.
doing a snippet of what I am doing? Like, how childlike is that?
Mm-hmm.
And what I would argue is like, all right, like what behavior do you want to be able to reinforce? Like positive reinforcement is so much better than negative reinforcement. But maybe I'll hand that off to you, Katie or John. Like, what would you say to those people who are hesitant about like wanting to be able to notice it, with those people who don't want to be able to praise because it feels so childlike? And by the way, is my take even right, or do you feel like it's off base at all?
No, I think that's so true. And that's something I hear, right? Like, why should I, right? Like that idea of like, why should I praise something that someone else should already be doing, for sure. And I think it's much more about, right, like showing up in a way you want to be shown up for.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you want validation, support, like how are you showing up in the relationship? And oftentimes too, I'll say, okay, maybe it's not praise. Like, let's just start by connecting and saying, what are we noticing is shifting? It doesn't have to be like, great job, right? It's just like, what's shifting? Has anything changed? I mean, I love a State of the Union in the relationship, but I think it's even just like, can we just begin to notice the impact, right? And just even like, maybe it's not like praising someone for doing something, but maybe it's also recognizing how those shifts are making you feel, right? Like, oh, I didn't have to think about the fact that we're out of milk today, and that was really great for me, right? And again, like if we're speaking about our own experience, then it's less of like, I have to give you a gold star.
Yeah. What is the State of the Union for those who don't know?
Well, so it is a relationship exercise by the Gottmans. That's a weekly check-in that is, and you might be able to speak more to this better than I can, but because I actually think you're the person that told me that it existed. So it's a weekly check-in where we go through and talk about like things that are going well, what was gone well over the past week. And then we focus on, and I might be watering it down too much. But then we also focus on what is called a regrettable incident that maybe happened over the week, and talk about maybe how we could have shown up differently for each other. Mm-hmm. And then also like, how do we each need to feel supported moving forward over the next week until we connect again? Did I hit all the points?
You absolutely crushed it. Yeah. Okay. I'll just kind of repeat some of the questions. So all credit actually goes to my spouse. She was the one that found it. The instructions on this handout that I give, it says to be able to listen to the other person without giving any negative feedback, advice, or problem solving, unless they ask for it. One person should ask their partner all the questions before switching. If one person ends up taking the whole time, don't worry, just start with the other person the next time. So this is, again, just like we're intentionally checking in with one another, because a distance doesn't happen all at once. It is a very, very gradual thing that happens over months, over years. So question number 1, what is the best thing that happened to you this week? Number 2, what's the worst thing that happened to you this week? How did I best meet your needs this week? How did I least meet your needs this week? So it says, be careful. Don't become defensive when you hear the answer, to just listen. What could I have done differently in that situation that would have been more helpful? What are you most worried about right now? Is there any way that I can help you with that? And what are you feeling right now? With all of these, and like, again, and those questions are not from the Gottmans, but I just found them, or at least my wife and I, we absolutely love that as a way of just really trying to be able to see each other,
Is that something that you would feel comfortable sharing if we handed that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would love to be able to do that.
Maybe we could create like an email list or something, and we could have people sign up, and you could get the handout for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So I know that we're kind of coming down to the final couple of questions, but Katie, I know that we've talked a lot about like kind of the mental load with, frankly, parents, and being able to kind of add a third and what that really kind of looks like. But what we were kind of curious about is, does this really come up with clients who don't have children? And what does that look like? How do you navigate that? Are there any similarities or differences?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think, yes, with people who have chosen or childless by choice, or who are like actively going through infertility, that's a whole other thing of like, so much of that falls on the woman, and just the expectation of that. But even people who are not choosing to have children, right? Like a lot of things that we talked about, trash, mowing the lawn, right? Laundry, cooking, all of these things, like those are shared responsibilities, even when you don't have children. And so I find that too, that, right, we see a lot of those sort of stereotypical gender normed, right? Like, I'm always picking up after my partner. They're not contributing to cleaning. They're not, like, I'm having to make the list of all the things we have to get done. So yes, absolutely. I'm seeing it outside of parenting. I think parenting can amplify it, right? Because you have right added stuff, but that's not to minimize people who don't have children are still struggling with this. Absolutely.
Well, okay. So, John, I actually wrote down a few different takeaways, and I didn't know if you had any yourself that you'd want to be able to add to it. A few that I was hearing from you and just being able to talk to you, Katie, is number one, it sounds like, I know this sounds funny, I'm hearing really trying to be able to focus on letting go of comparison, that it's really easy with our partner to be able to compare, like, here's my load versus your load. But instead, what I was hearing you say is like, you know, if your partner is struggling, to believe them, to trust them, to be able to show up for them. That because with our comparison, there's a very, very good chance that, especially with mothers, there is in a heteronormative relationship, of course, or I don't know, any other way, but um, there's probably so much invisible workload that like we aren't even aware of at all, and that's probably really fair for me. And I know that that's been a part of the process for John. But I'm hearing that as one of the epiphanies. I didn't know, um, John, what else spoke to you? I have a couple others, but I want to see if there's anything that you liked from
Yeah,
this.
I think a lot of this comes down to communication between couples. And I know that's kind of obvious. It's always communication is key. Communication is key. But a lot of times I think we're not really intentional about it. And so I like how you broke it down. A lot of times it's like, for instance, talking about the why this is important to me and not just, hey, can you take out the trash? It's, hey, when you take out the trash, can you get the bathroom bins? Can you get the diaper pail? Can you take it out can you get the things from the fridge? Can you take it out on trash day? This is important because when I go grocery shopping, it's a lot easier for me to realize what we have and don't have when we have a clean fridge. And then if you don't do it on trash day, then it sits in the fridge and smells bad as well. And like, you know, there's more to it that you like, if you just take out the trash and you just do that part and then like she gets mad, hey, you forgot these parts of it. You're like, it doesn't matter. Like whatever, we can throw it away a different day. But like showing why it's important and like communicating that, I think that was really eye opening for me because it's like, that makes sense. I feel a lot more urge to do these things if I understand why it's important. So that was a big takeaway for me.
John, you said one thing that I really liked, and it felt very concrete, where it's, you know, under kind of the idea of like, all right, like, where do we begin? It sounded like, you know, you really focused on like, how do we complement each other with tasks? You know, like, where's my partner struggling? And frankly, that was kind of that's what was going on in like the back of my head, or maybe what I was kind of unconsciously doing is that like there are tasks that my wife like completely hates. And if tasks are relatively like just kind of benign and nothing really to me, then like focusing on like complementing each other just to be able to really show up in a way that like is loving and helpful. And then Katie, the big one that I was hearing from you at the very end is you're saying, well, like with this change, I want you to be able to start slow. Like this isn't a overnight thing. Like this is a slow, gradual progress. And I think that that's like probably the perfect analogy for perfect idea around what change is. Change isn't often kind of like this sudden thing. It is something that like we slowly ease into and explore and feel and gain competency around. Because I'm sure that with like a lot of these individuals, I don't know, let's go with how competent I feel in regards to throwing a birthday party. That was something that I had to be able to learn and to be able to kind of explore, but it's starting slow with like these little tasks. Is that close to kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that only sets you up for success moving forward because things are going to continue to change. You're going to have, you know, extraneous outliers that continue to come up. You might move, you might lose a job, you might have sick parents that you need to adjust. And so, right, like if we've laid a foundation slowly over time, we've gotten used to doing that. We feel as prepared as you can be, right, for some of those larger things.
I was going to ask like the biggest maybe like roadblock or mental block that men have that you see in your practice and how like an action item or what you tell couples, like kind of like if you have like a reoccurring issue over and over and over that you see with guys, like one big, like if you're going to do anything in a relationship, do this type thing.
I think that, so yeah, that was the thing that's coming up for me that I'm thinking of is being willing to be vulnerable. Because I think there's so much like, I mean, obviously you guys have way more experience with being a man than I do. I have none. But I think just there's so much, what I was going to get at is like, this idea of like the man box, right? And you can't show emotion and you have to carry all of this, like you're the head of the household and right, the toxic masculinity, I have to know how to mow the lawn and fix stuff. I gotta do man stuff, right? I think so much comes into play. Like I have so many couples that come in where they're like, well, I just don't like the man is like, I just don't have I don't have feelings. I just don't care about that. And I'm like, that's bullshit. You absolutely do. And so I think it's like being willing to be it feels so scary to be vulnerable, right?
I love that because probably 75% of my hate comments are men and kind of saying the exact same thing. Like, look at Mr. Mom, or like, this guy is a woman, or like a real man doesn't do this stuff, like stuff like that.
Well, and I think that like so much with society, I mean, we're really truly almost like rewriting masculinity on what it truly means. Like, am I secure enough to be able to vacuum? Am I secure enough to be able to bake? And I feel like, if you are truly secure with who you are, it doesn't really matter too much like what the tasks are. It doesn't really like, those don't really define your masculinity whatsoever unless you actually really wanted to. Like, those who are really afraid, it feels like, respectfully, those are the individuals who are actually struggling with like their own masculinity and what it looks like and their own comfortability with being able to be masculine.
So how do you overcome that if that's what you experience? If the man does struggle with, having these feelings, this vulnerability, that's a woman's job. That's not my job. Like, how do you overcome that?
I mean, I like to give a lot of psychoeducation about how like we all have the same makeup of genetic, like for the most part, right? Like we all have the same brain that processes emotions in the same way, right? Maybe there are some hormonal differences, but we all experience emotions. And I also like to talk about, right, what we see happen when we do not experience them and do not allow ourselves to process them is that they are going to find their way out some way, one way or another, whether that's like your body starts to get really sick and you get sick often, right? Or we have these breakdowns in different ways, or maybe we're really angry, or right, like, and I think for men in particular, that's like the only socially acceptable form of emotion to express seems to be anger. But I like, we can deny it and say, oh no, that doesn't happen. But even having clients do something like, all right, let's just like, I hear you. You don't think that you have emotions, right? These things don't bother you. Like, what does your body feel like to be in this room right now? How do you like it? And oftentimes there's no connection to the body whatsoever. And so even just like, let's just notice it, right? Like the tension you might be feeling, discomfort in your stomach, right? Like what you think of as emotions are not, right? It's not just crying, right? Like it manifests in lots of different ways, and even going somatically, like let's get to know how it shows up for you in your body even before we start talking about it verbally.
I think that like also, a couple of things I want to be able to add to it is, number one, I think that it's important, kind of what you're doing, Katie, is like to be able to really like reframe like what it is to be a man, like with these individuals. And so, again, like one other thing that I like to be able to add is that like, is it really masculine to be able to run away from emotions? Is that really masculine to be able to hide it? Is that really kind of like the type of man that you want to be? Or is it actually more manly to be able to say like, yeah, man, this is me. This is actually what I'm experiencing. This is actually what's going on. And I want to be able to be courageous enough to be able to show it. And I think that for a lot of people, it's anxiety that comes up. I am so afraid of rejection or abandonment that it can just paralyze me. But the second piece that I was thinking with you, John, that I think that you're doing is like, I think that you're modeling what it is to be able to be a man. Like you are, oops, if I'm frozen, there you go. You're modeling what it is to be able to be a man. You are giving permission that I can have a beard and I can do dishes. Those two are not like opposites of one another, like
Uh-huh.
you can be able to do multiple things at once. And I think that like with that permission structure, it allows change to be able to happen, which I think is pretty darn beautiful and really, really powerful what you're doing,
Yeah, thank
John.
you. And I was actually going to kind of piggyback off of what Katie was saying with emotions, that I never really cared to go to therapy, but we ended up going for a different reason. But we went to couples counseling. And in those moments, the therapist, she asked me, like, how do you feel about this? And I'm like, I don't know how I feel. And she's like, well, how does this make you feel? And I'm like, I, I don't know. Like she was trying to get me to describe my feelings. I'm just like, I can't describe how I'm feeling. I don't feel. I don't have emotion. And she's like, you do. You just don't know how to analyze it. You just don't know what it means. And I'm like, I guess yeah, that's a good point. And so I think it was really powerful when you said that, because I was like, yeah, I never thought about it that way, and never realized this at all until, like, I didn't really care to go to therapy, but when I did go to therapy, I found it super insightful. I found it really enlightening, and I thought it was really, really enjoyable for myself. And so, thanks, Justin, for talking about my socials and my content and everything. And yeah, I try to lead by example and, show, what it is like to be a husband and father. And I try to do my best to kind of talk about the things that I never realized, and show that, yeah, I cook, I clean, I parent, and I'm still a man. Like, my wife and our relationship has been great. And I love to show that on my socials. But I think that also kind of leads us to, if you are looking for more insight into what we've been talking about today, you want to get more professional tools and knowledge, Kay, you have socials that I think you can highlight here that way people can follow you if you want to shout those out.
Yeah, it's just so my Instagram and my TikTok are Katie K Therapy. And then, or my website, if you're interested in getting connected for services, is just katiekirkenmeyertherapy.com.
Okay, great. Well, highly recommend checking her out. We'll put her down in the description, and highly recommend checking her socials out. So thank you for joining us today. Next time, we are going to be joined by Amanda Williamson. She's a professional photographer, and we're going to talk about the mental load associated with capturing these special family moments, because a lot of times women are the ones that are taking the pictures, not men, and we have something to learn from this. Wherever you are listening, make sure to review us, leave a review. We are new. We would love any feedback. If you have a comment, good, bad, we want to know. Just connect with us and tell us how we're doing. If you want more podcast takeaways, follow Do Better Jonathan. I'm on all social medias. Thank you for listening.
Please take care of yourself and the people that you love.